Hello and welcome to Connecting Jewish Grandparents, the Grand Plan podcast, the place where we come together to think about how we can leave a powerful, meaningful, and most of all, joyous Jewish legacy. One of the grandparents that I was working with this week, Miriam, she said, Sharona, I'm up at night worrying about if I've done enough. I don't think I did well enough as a mother. I am hurt, pained by the relationship I have with my son, and I'm hoping I can do it better with my grandchildren. If I didn't do well enough with him and it doesn't feel good, how can I fix it? And this is something we're working on in the coaching. Can you relate to this struggle? Do you wonder if your transmission of what's important to you, your values and your love, whether it was impactful with your children, if that relationship feels strong in spite of the bumps in the road? And if it doesn't, does it feel like you're able to connect with their children, with your grandchildren? If it's not working now, how will it work in the future? And again, this is what Miriam is worrying about and working on. And what about for you? What I want to talk about somebody who I definitely am not coaching, but is always coaching me. And that is the Torah. And this week's Torah portion in particular, Chayei Sarah. It is always heartbreaking to me reading the Torah portion when one of the characters that we love, one of the personalities we love, passes away. And in Chayei Sarah, we lose our first two grandparents, like great, 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 great grandparents. Both Sarah and Avraham pass away in this week's Torah portion. Sarah at the very beginning. That is why it's called Chayei Sarah. Chayei Sarah means the life of Sarah, and it's the lashon called the pleasant way of describing. Instead of calling it Sarah's death, we look at her life. That's how we want to always reflect on the end of something, is to look at the positivity and the life and the good of someone's life, not just and then they died. That's the very beginning of the parashat, and at the end of the Torah portion, Avraham passes as well. So these are personally painful to me, but the Torah is not talking about me. The Torah talks about, and then sometimes doesn't talk about, the son of Sarah and Avraham, the beloved Yitzchak, the son that they waited for 100 years to have. The son that was so valuable and so precious, the son that Avraham almost sacrifices in last week's Torah portion of Vayera. So as much as my friend and person I'm coaching, Miriam, is worrying about the relationship with her son, how did Yitzchak handle the near sacrifice? How does Sarah handle it? The commentators say a lot about how Sarah handles it, and I don't want to dive too deeply into it right now. But the simple fact is that Yitzchak never sees his mother again. By the time he is down from the Akedah, the binding experience, his mother has passed. They never get to speak about it. They never get to unpack what happened there. They never get another moment together. And when he followed his father up, he never knew that was going to be the last moment. I mean, we never know when that last moment is going to be. That is hard and it is painful that there is no further opportunity. But you know what's even crazier? After the Akedah experience, the Torah never recounts a moment of dialogue between Avraham and Yitzchak. Avraham lives a lot longer. And you would think that this beloved son that he wanted so desperately, that he did everything possible, that he spent his life asking for, that all of those pieces, you would think that they would be so close and so well bonded. And yet, the Torah does not share a word that is shared between them. So it could be that they had a perfectly lovely relationship and they went jogging together and went out for Starbucks. It could be that they had amazing, powerful Shabbat meals together or Zoom calls, and it could be that they did not speak again. It's really painful to contemplate. It's really hard to realize that our great patriarchs, the first Jews, the great, 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 and I mean great in both sense, grandparents, the first Jewish leaders, had uncertainty about their legacy. And it's both hard and incredibly relatable. You don't know how your children are internalizing or connecting with your words. You do know about the fights. You do know about the struggles. You do know about the silent treatment or the phone calls that don't happen with the frequency you would like. You know about the runs that aren't happening or the Zoom calls that aren't happening or the Shabbat meals that aren't happening together. You are not alone if things are not as smooth as you would like them to be. And then how do you hold that? It's not easy. It's really heart-wrenching. And I'll pause here for a minute to say that maybe you do have a phenomenal relationship. Sometimes I talk about how this podcast is for the grandparents, but it's also for the in-betweeners. So if you are a grandparent with a great relationship with your children and grandchildren, that's wonderful. You can just take this time to think about the struggles of our matriarch and patriarch. And you can take time to send this podcast on to friends who might not be as blessed as you are in those relationships. If you're an in-betweener and you're listening, think about how painful that is for your parents or your in-laws to feel that tension and think about what you can do to talk about it. Last week's podcast in Vayera, I spoke about that talking and being intentional in that conversation. But whether things are sailing smoothly for you, or if they're feeling tense, let's pivot back to the thing I love to talk about, connecting to grandchildren. Your legacy is not only measured in the relationship with your children. It is about the grandchildren. It is always about the grandchildren. So, what are the seeds you are planting today for the grandchildren? Think about it. Be intentional. What is it you're doing? Last week, I spoke about those conversation prompts, and I will again put in the show notes the 18 conversation topics as a jumping off point. But it's about the intentional moments of grandparenting. It's the calls, it's the walks, it's the saying, "Hey, I'll call you again next week and we'll finish that conversation." Even small moments of being present or stories shared. A story about something that happened to you today or a story about something that happened to you when you were their age. Share those moments. Share those painful moments, or hopefully more those joyous and meaningful moments. Share those traditions. Be intentional in those connections. We bring it back to this week's Torah portion. You, if we had the opportunity to interview Avraham and Sarah at the end of their lives, they would probably tell you that they were, again, I can't speculate, but I don't think at that moment they were proud of their legacy. The Almighty had promised many things to Avraham and Sarah, and as many as the stars in the sky and the sand on the ground, and yet, obviously, they weren't seeing it. They had one son. And yet, if you look today, you can see how fulfilled that prophecy was and how phenomenal their legacy is with all of our Jewish people. We're here. We are their legacy, and we would not be here without what they left behind. So you should know and appreciate that it might not always be perfect with your children, and it might not always be perfect with your grandchildren. But that legacy that you are building continues to grow with time. I give you a beracha that being present and intentional and joyous and calming and good, that it comes naturally to you, that with ease you are able to bond in the moment and lay that foundation for future joyous Jewish legacies. I want to help you on that mission. Please, in the show notes, let's book a call. Let's start the conversation. I want to help you. I don't want you up at night worrying about what your legacy is going to be. This is the time now to be doing it. You don't know, unfortunately, when that last moment is going to be. Now's the time to be that amazing grandparent that you have the potential to be in fostering that legacy. So again, go down to the show notes, sign up for the conversation prompts, sign up for a free coaching call, and let's get this started for you personally. Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, is the inspiration for the life and the legacy that you will leave. Shabbat Shalom.